And then the details came through when Daniel went through the regression. So I had done something, and this was in a primitive time, and Daniel was being tortured at the stake. And I was very
Oh,
frantic about it, and I couldn't handle that. So I went up to the pier and lit us both on fire.
hello and welcome to Holistic Circle Podcast, Spiritual Conversation. My name is Philipp Kobald. We are reaching out to people who are passionate about spreading light, love, and joy. And I'm very happy to have here today from Australia, Elinor and Daniel. Welcome and good morning from me and good afternoon to you guys. Hello.
Good morning, and thank you so much for creating this space to have conversations for people on the path. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
And it's a first for me, first time two guests. So I'm trying to figure out this is a good new thing. So we're all learning and we're all growing. And podcasters grow and learn the most.
It's live, it's happening right now, like life is and how it is to be on the path. And either you learn and adapt in the moment or and create the best show that you can, or you don't. So you're absolutely right. You learn so much even about the human psyche through podcasting. It is a phenomenal world to be part of.
Yeah, I'm talking to you because you have the great background and experience, as sure as everybody knows. And I'm just trying to must ask a question or two before we go into the spiritual questions, because I don't know how people do it. I used to have, more than 30 years into the spiritual world and business, like but in the real world thing outside of the media. And I think I've met, let's say, once or twice a fellow traveler throughout the year. And it was a good year, right? One good conversation or two good conversation. That's a good year. I'm having 5 to 6 conversations per day right now. How you do it? I mean, how you process that much of a good conversation?
You're right. And the beauty with podcasting is it is one of those rare moments where everyone has blocked off everything that's happening in their life. And we are just having a conversation with no other objective than openly sharing value and giving to others whatever comes through in the moment. Even at networking events, when you go and stand with people, they're still on their phone, they're thinking how to get back, or they have to go to another event, but when you're here, we are right here, right now. It is such a beautiful present moment experience. And as you're riding highs of speaking to so many people, it really fuels that sense of connection to a community that may not be accessible in your locality or immediate geography as well. So it really is a wonderful experience to guest, to host, to be part of, to share, and to give back in such a way.
Yeah, the point I try to make is that in terms of personal growth, right? I teach more than 30 years and I do a lot all my life and I read a lot and whatever I do. But I'd say like on a regular year, you just grow. But since I've started this, I said I have at least every day a mind-blowing conversation. I meet people I've never imagined to meet. So my personal learning curve has been like this, it's not even a line up. So I'm wondering if I'm Buddha by the end of the year if I continue to be modest. Most probably I don't have to turn on the studio lights. It's mind blowing, and that's I'm wondering how you cope, how you process such a feedback, such a learning, such a growth through this conversation. I really think this will be an interesting adjustment because I'm high after a lot of conversations. I mean, I had talked to an exorcist for crying out loud. I mean, I'm running back to my wife, like jumping like crazy. I talked to an exorcist. I talked to an exorcist. It's just it's really a enormous personal spiritual growth for me being a podcast, and I wanted to share it with you because
Yeah.
who else to share it with, right?
Yeah,
So
definitely.
that's it. That's the unofficial private part of the podcast. Now
That
let's start
that's
with the
all
real
that's
thing.
all good. It reminds me of what it is like being on the path. There's a lot of excavation of wisdom, and then there is the integration aspect. And we can, you know, excavating the wisdom and having exposure to it is great, but it is then up to the individual if something really resonates with them. then how are they going to integrate that into their life as well? And podcasting offers such a huge buffet, and you're just exposed to the buffet all the time, which is, you know, great as well. But the integration aspect came up when things do come up, whether it's, you know, in recording or if people are listening and they're like, oh, you know, this has caught my interest, then what are they going to actually take from it and not just constantly be exposed to knowledge and not actually do the work. But yeah, we can get into the path in continuity. But we're glad that you will be one of Vienna's most, you know, walking best exposed spiritual hosts and everything. So it's wonderful. You're earning your stripes yourself.
I'm really looking also, yeah, what you said right now is maybe we have a minute because you really know what you're talking after the experience you had. And that's why I really wanted to have this start of the podcast, because what you said right now is exactly what I'm looking for in a conversation, watching these things, getting triggered, seeing all of it. Well, what happens next, right? You're absolutely right. What do people do with this information? We are flooded with information, abundance of information, but how do we transfer this into real action and real activity? Well, thank you so much for bringing it up, because I think these are the questions we will have to be asking more and more when we get more and more information, i.e., whatever artificial intelligence, all of this is flooding over us. I guess we definitely have to start also thinking how to process this or how to make it real, right? So thank you so much for bringing this up. All right. Okay. If you both be so kind, I love to start my podcast with giving people a chance to make a small introduction for those of the viewers who might not know you, to just a little bit see who you are, what's your background, and then we will bring it to the spiritual, the path, and the awakening, and the things that we're going on from there. So
Sure.
please.
Yeah, I'll start. So I'm Daniel, and I would say really the initiation to my path has been quite a long one. It started in about 2016 when I lost a lot of weight and realized things were deeper than just, counting calories and this and that. I realized there was more going on with human physiology, just nutrition and the way the metabolism works. I was getting into the ketogenic diet back before everyone knew about it, and it was written on everything, where there were doctors, working with whole food diets and such. And it just took me so much deeper than that to even understanding that the whole world has so much of our understanding of how things really are, either just misunderstood or even backwards in some cases. And that expanded and spilled over into every area of my life. The next big one was the financial system and money, and then Bitcoin. And you keep going down and exploring these areas, and the questions pile up faster than the answers do before you start to realize that the whole dimension of the 3D cannot be answered from the tools that we have available here. And so I, started looking into metaphysics and the occult and all of these areas as well. And basically I started awakening into my own understanding that, we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and how much I've been cut off from it from my own life as well. And learning to now connect with spirit and to trance with the business, which we can speak a little bit about, and some of the tools we have at our disposal, working with trance states, for example, to induce past life regression. So we can get people into a state where they can go back into past lives. The level of information, knowledge, but particularly wisdom we've been able to excavate to further our own progression on the path has turned me into someone I don't even realize from those several years ago, let alone 2 years ago. And it's also part of one of the greatest rewards from the path was, my best friend becoming my partner. So I'll hand it over now to Eleanor for her introduction.
Yeah, not wasn't initiated as long as Daniel, but it was 2023, and I had moments of breakdowns to have the breakthrough and realize that I do not exist in my own reality. I don't There's nothing left of me anymore after the fragmented aspects of the psyche, whether it's the saboteur or the people pleaser, or so many different parts were, you know, vehemently running the show against what I was consciously wanting. And this seemed antithetical to where what I was presenting to the world, that I'm a strong, independent, put together woman. And I certainly did do great things. I love writing and I have 4 books to my name, and we're working on our first book together, and I got to meet some incredible people, and there were certainly highlights, but it was a very short stint in my life, and I couldn't understand why were the wheels falling off, because it wasn't out of laziness. It wasn't through lack of diligence. Yet things were not moving in my life, and that then showed me that things were not moving in any aspect of my life. So I needed to lift the hood, and the unconscious presented itself, and it's like, wow, everything is on fire, and there's no managers here, and there was a lot of chaos under the hood through unresolved wounds that stemmed both from this lifetime, previous lifetimes, generational, ancestral, that are to be cleared with me. And I'm the first to have made a conscious decision as to the partner that I want out of truth and love, and not out of necessity and scarcity or security. And that is big for their generation. That alone breaks so many generational patterns. And I was sent down the path to realize that the success that I thought I was chasing was also deeply rooted in distorted patriarchal values carried over lifetimes. And that was not going to allow the heart to experience what it wanted. And in order to shift things in the 3D, needed to go to cosmic levels of perspective in order to gain traction, gain understanding, gain language around this. And for me, it was astrology that found me as the first language to help realize that, well, this is how my energy wants to express it, or best expresses as. And here I was working completely against it and wondering, why isn't X manifesting? So this might be a good segue into astrology, which found us, which was just imperative on our journey and continues to be, a backbone to the language that we speak as well.
We we'll get there in a second, but I already have like 5 different podcasts in the last 2 minutes of you speaking, so many questions coming up. So there's so much there because there are 2 lives and the last 15, 20 years of development. So there's definitely more than a 30 seconds clip here coming up. And I don't even know where to link in, but I would like to link in, especially we cannot compare our both lives, your and mine. But I've also, when I was much younger, been a bit successful. So I understand that part. And the fun thing is, I also hit a moment of being very successful, making a lot of money. Everything was on my side. There was no crisis. There was no problem. But I hit a huge emptiness. uh, I hit a total void, and many times I think maybe if I had better advisors, if I had better managers, if I had better this or that, maybe they could have shifted me through and brought me to an even higher success level. But I was alone with this overwhelming success. And so I just gave it all up, right? Because I was looking for deep, I was looking for more. So in that sense, I really feel what you say, because in a way I think I've been through similar. I've not been through your story, but I've been for story for experiencing the void. And the big question is that all? Is that everything there is? Is that just, making money, everybody patting on your shoulders, people see you on the street? Well, okay, great. That's all lovely and fine, but is that it? Right? So I understand that you had this moment, and I think this is a real awakening possibility.
Absolutely.
So let's continue from the road. I'm intrigued, and let's go now to astrology, because you said that astrology was one of the things that showed you a path forward, that showed you a way forward. So I guess this happened through your friendship, or who introduced you to astrology. So how does this came into that the life, and how did it manifest? Did you get a reading, or how did you saw an exit through astrology? Maybe you can a little bit elaborate.
It started with Eleanor, so I'll let her open with it and I'll take over.
Yeah.
Thank
I
you.
There was a friend at the time who had a reading with someone, and I'm like, "Sure, I'd like that." And I gave the astrology reading to myself as a gift for my 32nd birthday. And I went in thinking she's just going to tell me everything that I already know about myself, because I know everything about myself and everything is going just fine. And I came in and I was like, yeah, she'll just tell me, like, just give it a few more years and you'll be great. She read straight through me. And I was like, how do you even know this? I've told you nothing about me. You know my name. And even that she spelt wrong, which was fine. But this astrology isn't based on the name. It's your birth date and your birth time and location. And I watched back the recording and I was just stunned. I was just spinning. And for the next 10 days, I just spun and I tried to shove down the emotions because it started bringing up so much to the surface. Because she told me that, the mother wound is the greatest, aspect of this life. The moon is the highest point on my chart. Daniel can speak to the details of both of our charts. That is not my forte. And she was telling me that, 33, this is the year that things are going to correct. I'm like, what's there to correct? I'm in control. Everything's fine in life. It's like, I'm trying not to believe you, but there was a part of me that was like, that's it. And I remember telling Daniel about it, and he's like, the hardest thing to do is to commit identity suicide. I'm like, but what do I have to give up? So I tried to shove it under the hood, under the carpet for months. And she said something that would happen when I was going overseas, and it happened. And I'm like, okay, I need to listen. And that's when I had the spiritual breakdowns, and I got in touch with her after I came back. It's like, I don't even know how I'm going to do this. I don't even know what we're doing here, but I need this more than anything. And she started painting a picture of the truth of the real tapestry of my life and how I was then interacting with others. And it was taking the glasses, the rose-colored glasses, or the dirty glasses off. They were not rose-colored, and giving me a language and a lens to understand why I had access to certain energies, why this was happening, why this couldn't happen, how come this, how come that. And I started then calling Daniel because it was a tool that brought us closer. Or the healing journey started bringing us together, and I would start telling him. And Daniel needs to know everything about everything better than anyone else, which is phenomenal and wonderful for me because now I had two astrologers, and that's how he started learning into it. And yeah,
Yeah, so basically, because Eleanor was seeing her, I was curious to have a reading as well after a while eventually. And I went in. Now, to give you a perspective, I was the sort of person who would turn away from astrology before. It was, oh, that's just something at the back of Women's Weekly that says you'll find love this year. And that was it. That's how I always thought of astrology. But then after the awakening, I'd never encountered astrology again. So when I was faced with Eleanor mentioning she was seeing an astrologer, I'm like, right. I don't understand anything about how the world works right now. I need to have an open mind. And so I went in very open. And when I had my first session, it also it blew the lid off everything because it wasn't even so much whether things were right or wrong, but just the depth and the level of areas that could be spoken to were just so profound that I'd never really even given the time to consider or value how they play into the bigger tapestry of my own life. And so with it, I'm just after my first session, I'm like, right, I have to learn astrology so I can make sense of this myself. And I remember just spending weeks just devouring every YouTube video, buying several books, looking up everything online. And I even started creating reports, particularly for Christmas. I did a 42 and a 43-page report for my nephew and niece as part of my learning because they're quite young at the time. They were three and five, and it was I was just blown away by how many sort of elements and aspects there are and how much complexity. It's sort of like the game of chess. How you look at it and you're like, okay, this is pretty straightforward, and then once you're 10 moves in, there's not many games that have been played that way before. In the same way that you look at charts and it's like it looks all pretty straightforward until you start looking a bit deeper, and then you can see the nuance and you can really see how deep it goes. And what really spoke to me is the fact that everything that was coming through is something I've basically spent most of my life living completely out of alignment with. And that's the fact that I'm heavily intuitive. The astrologer was talking up the psychic capacity, and I'm like, I can't even remember my dreams. And so, even though I was sort of initiated sort of onto the path, I hadn't made as much progress even in, between 2016 and at this point, late 2023. A lot of it was still surface world sort of stuff, and maybe just more mental exploration and philosophical exploration of the deeper spiritual elements. People like Rudolf Steiner and Helena Blavatsky, these occultists who really understand the spirit world, but it was more just done mentally as an exercise. But it was really with astrology that I'm like, oh, right, yes, this is all about me. And you forget the fact that you're an agent of the whole universe. Like, as a part of the whole universe, you are the whole universe expressing as an individual as well. And astrology was sort of that, that knock on the head to say, right, like you've got a lot here to manage and also a lot of tools at your disposal. And so that actually awakened me into just the tools I have available and the way I work. Because if you have a look at my necklace here, this is Neptune, and I'm a Pisces
I saw it.
stellium in the ninth house. So I haven't very much spent a lot of time connecting with Neptune until I realized how important Neptune is. It's my sun, my Venus, my Mercury, and my North Node in a big stellium. And it's like, this is no wonder I couldn't make life work, because unlike Eleanor, who's had a lot of material success, a lot of I've been plagued with health issues because I've lived out of alignment for so long. And the ability for me to have that worldly success was never going to manifest because I was already working with the wrong energy.
If we have the great opportunity to talk about astrology, can we spend like a couple of minutes for people who are watching this and have not, as you said, as much thinking? Like, let's say, like me, I read once every year. The At November there's a on the vote, woman's vote. There is
Whoa.
a great horoscope of the year, and I read it every year. I'm obsessed about it. I can't wait the November Vogue to come out. So this is my awakening experience once a year, and I'm always finding a new husband, which I I don't need, but there it is. And of course I'm gonna have a great successful year, which sometimes is actually true. So there you go. So no, I'm serious. Let's for people who have not as much background as you with astrology, just ask a couple of stupid questions from me to
Okay,
you, so people a little bit understand how it actually works. So
sure.
first question, I know people are interested. Are you using the date of birth for the star alignment, or you're using the conception moment where you think the stars manifest with people?
The birth time.
Okay,
It's the
because I
point
know
at
that there
which
are
you
two.
enter the world.
Right.
You leave the
Makes
womb
both
and
sense
tell the
to me.
world we're here. Yeah.
Right. Both make sense to me, but I know that there are very different schools in
Yeah.
astrology about that, right?
I'd like to add as a
Now,
side note to that, that in human design, which utilizes astrology, they also utilize 88 degrees or approximately 3 months before you're born as the unconscious element. So there's actually a chart developed 88 degrees before as well, because that's the time that they believe your unconscious forms. And then your personality forms at the time of birth. But in just conventional astrology, yeah, we use the birth time.
right. So the basic idea is that basically the universe or the star has certain energies at certain levels or certain vibrations at certain times. And basically with astrology, you try to understand or to learn or to for experience which energy is present at a certain moment when someone is born, and that energy transcends into the person and creates some like a basic foundation or basic vibration which guides people and helps build their character and so forth. Is that the concept of astrology to understand?
Essentially, yes. I think of it as sort of like a symphony that's playing, and the energies have different tonalities as well that they play. For example, if you get Mars in Aries in its home, it's going to play out very strongly. But if you put Mars in Venus, for example, which is ruled in Libra, which is ruled by Venus, Mars energy isn't going to express very well. So even the energies of the planets inside the zodiac also can have strengths and weaknesses that also present different expressions as well.
Well, when you say express, you mean that they have a natural vibration or a natural energy as a planet for their spinning or through their for their magnetism, whatever it is, that transcends throughout the universe and creates a certain picture, like if it could be measured, we would see that at every second of the day we have different energy picture coming to us from the universe to Earth, and therefore it is. Is that what you basically how you see that the concept of astrology?
Sort of, yes. It's sort of hard to science the metaphysics of the planets and the zodiac themselves because it's done heavily intuitively. And so it's not just the energy that the planets put out themselves, it's the way we also interpret it individually and collectively. But some of them are
Right.
quite obvious. We look at the sun and we say, this is when it's present in the sky, it is the most dominant. This is why when you look at your horoscope, um, in Vogue, you'll look to, what was my sun sign? And that's why it's one of the most prominent one that most people who don't have any understanding of astrology will look towards.
Right. Yes. Because the way I see it, it has been created at some moment. People had to come up with astrology. And there
Mhm.
are basically two ways how I can put it together in my head. Either for just thousands of years of experience and observation, it's people born in a certain time of the year in a certain way with a certain star alignment. They've developed this kind of like a warrior character or this kind of a character. And so they refined it over time. That would be one explanation how astrology came to be. And the other one would be people being clairvoyant, just basically see and think that one night the star looks more red, or in some night the star had a more bluish kind of a wave and energy, and then come to the understanding that resonates with our organs. And through our organs, you can also start to explain astrology that at some point, basically, that, that it all builds up through our inner structure, and that some heart chakra has been more activated at a certain time of day in a certain part of the year. And so you could have built the whole concept of astrology through the human organs or the bodies or chakras, whatever you want to call it, and then understand that on certain days, certain activations are present. So these are the two, I think, the two ways astrology could be logically explained. Do you
Yeah.
have any preferences? Do you have an opinion about it, or is there a third way I'm not aware about? How you explain it?
Yeah, I find this question still a little bit challenging to answer. So take whatever I say with a grain of salt. I do think that the planets themselves also have their own spirit, and you can commune with those spirits as well. And the ability to connect and commune with their own energies is like what you mentioned, like with the clairvoyance, is there's external signs that you can see. For example, when we go into winter and the sun moves further away, the leaves fall off and then it gets cold and such as that as well. The sun's at, in weakness, for example. So we do see physical signs that reflect with, say, the sun and the seasons. You see the moon and the 28.5-day cycle as well. But there's also what you mentioned, like with the clairvoyance, that spiritual element where you can connect with the energies and become one. You can do this in ritual. You can do this in trance as well. Um, I've had conversations with Jupiter, for example, which I thought would be very challenging, and then Jupiter just arrived, and it's like, yeah, what would you like to know? And I didn't think it would be that easy
Oh,
because even
that's another podcast. There you go. So come a little bit back to you now. You had these readings, you had this information, you had the motivation to transform. But I think it's a brave thing to do, and it's like a confusing moment, a moment of looking around. And obviously, as you said, you both kind of found each other through this searching and this confusion and all of this going on, and you discovered each other. Is there a moment to maybe see how coming together, binding together, also creates another level, another depth when new ideas then came and the new projects and the things that you're doing, I think came out of this meeting each other as more awakened, as new people. Is that something that works? That
yeah.
definition, new people?
Well, I'd say like where attention goes, energy flows. And, we're always building relationships or letting them fall apart. And with how we met through work and really challenging everything that was happening around us, and then using astrology and then later other tools to really further understand ourselves was a lot of fun. That's a huge part as well. It was very fun to learn about ourselves, even the painful and the dark shadow parts, working with Pluto, for example, and Lilith and Chiron and these elements as well astrologically. There's there's a real relief as well that can come to it. And being able to do that together, even just as friends at the time, was just enormous for building the bond.
Right. So let me just one more time. So I said you said you're talking to the planets, you're connecting with their energy. Is that something that you do on regular basis, that you're trying to really feel the planets as part of your work? Because maybe that's something I should have asked right away when you said it. So how does it manifest? You meditate and you try to feel the vibrations, or you have certain rituals, or how you get in contact with these planets' energies?
Well, mine was just setting the intention and just doing about 10 minutes of breath work, and then I was just as surprised as Jupiter was. I do feel the need to
Both
do
of you doing that, and you both have
I
this ability now.
I still don't know the limits of my ability because every time we do our other forms of work as well, I just keep getting more and more come through. But trance channeling is something that I appear to have the ability to do, and I'm still yet to develop it further. But I also see how limitations in the material world has also made that very difficult to access in this life, um, as it was set up.
The body, or the society?
The
Sorry, I didn't
body,
understand.
it was more just this incarnation and the challenges that Daniel faces needing to be worked through to be able to access it as well. Because
I
we're all
understand.
spiritual beings, but we also have different spiritual skills and abilities as well. And
Right.
just discovering
And
what
and
they are is part of the journey.
are both of you having this connection with the planet, or you also can tune into the energies, or not yet, or getting there, or how's it with you, Eleanor?
Getting there. Like Daniel, this is a skill that Daniel has across lifetimes. He's a master of many things. He brings in so much from different lifetimes. When we explore past lives, there's a big difference between who I've been and who he's been. But I did attempt as well, and I had a brief conversation with Venus. I played a frequency, and I was able to drop in. And the thing is, when you're in that state, you second guess. Is like, is this me? Am I making it all up? It's like we're making it all up anyway. It's you know, we are. And it was a conversation
We're
that
stopping
was
the podcast right here.
um and for me it was still challenging to hold that state because I was getting in my own way of like, am I just making up my own answers? But then I know how the voice in my head sounds when I talk to myself and the language that I use. And when you do ask for guidance, whether it's your higher self, whether it's a benefic entity, whether it is you know, the spirit of whatever it is you're trying to channel, you can tell that this is not the voice and the thoughts and the regular broadcasting that comes through our mind as well. So
Yeah. You can
yeah.
notice it through like the tone that's used, the words, and particularly with the second person there, they can pick up a lot better that
Mm.
it's not you. When you're on your
Right.
own, you can just delude yourself into anything. But when I've had like trance sessions and such where I invoke our higher selves, I come out of it and I have no memory,
Mm.
and that's how we
I have
know
a
that
very
there's some level
specific
of validity.
Yeah, I have a very specific opinion about that subject, because I'm teaching more than 30 years meditation, like lots of groups. And there's always a moment where people think, especially when you experience energies and all of this and so forth, and people always ask, is it real? Is it not real? Am I making it up? I said, it doesn't bloody matter, because if you get healthier, if you get stronger, who cares where it comes from? Just take the gift, and just don't obsess about it, because it's just a waste of time. You're getting better. You're getting better. Look at you. You sleep better. You this better. You do that better. So who cares? I mean, let's make it up. Okay, fine by me, right? So that's what I always say to my students at that point. And
Yeah.
I personally am a strong believer. I don't go too deep. If it works, I'm happy, and that's it. That's me. Right.
Yeah.
Wonderful. So you mentioned a couple of times that you do other things as well, and you have projects, and maybe that's be a good moment to a little bit present to the world what you're both doing. We, I think, understand where you came from. So let's see where you're going, if that's all right. If you give a small, uh,
Yeah.
just presentation, whatever it feels like.
So the idea with our business, Truth of You, is that we want to help individuals come to the realization of the truth and of who and what they are, as infinite co-creating spiritual beings that were never born and will never die. And they put on, clothing that we call the human meat suit. And they forget their memories and they have an incarnation here. And then at the end of it, like Ram Dass would say, death is not, difficult and painful, but it's as easy as taking off a tight boot at the end of a long day of work. It's a very easy transition. And so we want to use many modalities and many languages and tool sets to help people realize that there's no one model that will give you the truth. The idea of you transcends all the models, but people have different jumping on and jumping off places for understanding and even being able to build that connection to spirit as well. And so a huge part of where our business is going as well is through quantum healing hypnosis technique, or QHHT. Most people know that as a form of hypnosis to access past lives. And so there's a lot of healing you can do there because it accesses the quantum field of oneness, where you can gain access to such a large part of yourself and even the universe that you can even begin to connect with, not even just your own past lives, but Dolores Cannon used it to connect with other other individuals. For example, she connected with Nostradamus back in time and was able to have a dialogue, which she wrote 3 books about. And so the idea of being able to connect like that shows that even time is a construct of the 3D as well, which you hear about this, but the idea of really experiencing it and knowing it is where you can transcend the belief. And so that's where, with the QHHT work, especially that we do on each other, we've had to learn what it means to even surrender the ego, because it's very difficult for a lot of people who have never had that experience. They don't know what it's like. I remember my first QHHT session back in late 2023, I almost failed because my ego was so strong that it's like, just relax, just let go. And I didn't know what I was holding on to that I had to let go of, because it was a completely foreign concept. And that's also something that we got told is going to be a challenge, is that in the West, not a lot of people have respect for spirit, even from the outset. And so it's another part of the business that we have to move into, is just education on this space.
Right.
So
So
Mhm.
So sorry, because not everybody is so familiar with all the terms that you're using and, and the techniques that you were mentioning. As you said, you want to also have an educational part. So let's do it right here. So are these machines that you're using? Is it a kind of like guided through words? Just a little bit explain people how this looks in practice for the ones who have no background knowledge about what you're doing.
Yeah. So QHHT simply was developed by Dolores Cannon back in the 1960s in the United States. And she was just a standard hypnotist who took a client too deep and entered into a state where she could access past lives. She refined that over the next 40 years and traveled around the world teaching it. When it's done, when we have clients in, when we practice, we have an interview process. We get to know who you are. We get to know what your life's been about, the major milestones, the major challenges, and we account for that when you're in the trance state. And then when we put you under,
A hypnosis technique. It's a hypnosis technique.
yes, it is.
Right? Because in Europe, we always will talk about quantum and things like that. They're using machines where they have certain frequencies, and that's how they do the quantum healing. They're usually doing it with certain machines and tools and things like that. There's a lot of this going on here, so that's why I had to
Yeah.
a little bit specific. So you're talking about as a deep hypnosis technique that brings you in a certain alpha waves or whatever it's called in the technical term. That's so deep that you deep relaxation, as you said, you let loose, you let go, you're completely part of the void, and that's how you then enter these realms, and you can start a deep healing from old wounds, and basically, that's what it is basically, right?
Yeah. So it's all done. The work itself is done from the theta brainwave state, which is deeper than alpha. It's basically on the verge between being awake and being asleep. You hit it every morning when you wake up and every night right before you drift off. And so we get you into that state where you're still present. You're still aware of what's going on, but you're sort of in two minds. It's quite difficult to describe to someone who doesn't understand trance, but it does
Like
require
dream
that level
world,
of surrender. Yeah.
similar to dreams, right? Yeah.
Yes, but it's like waking dreams that you can control. And so
Yes.
those who meditate, those who have done a lot of this work, and those who are already in the spiritual space, we found not only can they move much deeper, they can move a lot faster and they can experience a lot more in a shorter time frame as well. I've had clients who have been on the spiritual path who have done their own soul retrieval work in the session. I've had some even venture back to the divine spark and know what it means to be in communion with God. And that was mind blowing. And I've had others who went just to their last life and they just wanted to know that everything's okay and that, you know, life doesn't have to be scary. You don't have to worry what people say. So some lessons are very, they've I don't want to say they're smaller, but they meet because when we work with clients, their higher self is the one coming through, and the higher self knows exactly what to do. We just act as a facilitator and a guide to allow them to be imparted with their own deeper knowledge. And that's
You said not. You said a couple of times now. We. So I'd like to see this physically. I mean, hypnosis is usually done by one. Is this like, are you together there at the session? Are you working with the same clients, or you both do the same work with different clients? Because just to clarify
yeah.
the word "we," how this comes into play
I
here.
meant as in Eleanor and I, but when we do sessions, it's only one of us at a time with one client.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
But
we
you're
don't
both
do
doing it. You're both working with clients.
correct.
All right. And is this done live or through also for the internet for Zoom, or this has to be done live in the room?
So with QHHT, Dolores Cannon specifically stated that it needs to be done in person, and we honor and respect that as well. So we only offered that service in person. But we've also pursued, one of her students developed another program called Beyond Quantum Healing, Candice Craw Goldman. And she was one of Dolores's first level 3 students who found that in the age of the internet and the way the quantum healing works outside of time and space, you don't need to be in person. So we've pursued beyond quantum healing as well. So we can offer a similar service online.
All right, this is very interesting
Yeah.
because that's a big divide in the spiritual community, right? There's like always this endless discussion with certain clairvoyants and all of these things. Does it work for the internet? It's done millions of times every day, but people still question. And the ones who believe hands-on and working directly with with the person is necessary to really understand what's happening. Right. Would you maybe, I don't know, just bring you a little bit back in, is that you had this experience as you're doing it as a therapist, but can you maybe take our audience just through one session, maybe how it feels to yourself or how you had one client and how it felt, just a little bit to tell the people that how it feels, that how it is. So, you know, take us into one session if you will.
Well, I'd actually like to talk about my own session that I had
Okay,
when
sure. Go ahead.
when Eleanor and I were best friends at the time, and went up on a holiday to Queensland together to both get our own QHHT sessions done. And so basically, I went in. You meet with the practitioner. She didn't know anything really about me other than what she was intuitively and psychically able to attain. And we had a conversation, and it was not scripted. It was not written down. It was just a really deep connection where you can talk about anything. And that went for several hours. Usually in the practice, it's minimum of 2. And you just get to know everything about their life, where they're at and what they've struggled with. And, mine have particularly been around health uh, and, certain family issues, as I'm sure we all have. And she was not only able to do the QHHT work, but she was able to offer further guidance from her own channel that she's in communion with through spirit. So that made it a bit more interesting and rich as well. So we do that. She figures out who I am, where I'm at, what I need. And then we go into the hypnosis. You get onto a bed and they go through a script and they get you to relax further and further. They stimulate your imagination and they continue to guide you deeper into relaxation while still stimulating that visualization field. And so they can induce the trance. And then they take you on a journey to a point where you end up landing into a past life. And so because I'd done some of this work, I was able to go through 5 lives quite quickly. And what I was able to gain were 5 lives, all men, all masculine men, all powerful men, and power in their own right. Some were
Right,
large.
right.
Mhm.
I break you here, just go quick and let people understand. You really see the life like flashes, like we see our own life, or it's just the understanding how it was, or how did it manifest? What do you mean? You went through life. I mean, like flashback 30 seconds, this life, and then next life. Or just explain
Yeah.
people how it feels
So
inside.
you get given a direction, and then it asks you to land in a different scene for the very first time. And then you're asked to just describe, what do you see? What do you feel? Do you feel young or old? Do you feel like a male or female? Are you standing around people or are you standing on your own? Are you out in the country? Are you up in a building? What can you notice? And you get located. And everyone seems to
Sorry,
experience this
but
differently.
but this question, are you young or old? Do you see in your head an old man's face that is not yours, or you just know from like saying I'm an old man
Yeah.
because just subconscious is telling you, just so people can a little bit really feel how it is being in your head at that moment, if you can.
In my experience, the visuals are not the strongest, but it's more of just the knowing. The idea when you're in that state of trance, there is no thinking. It just is.
It's
And just
just
whatever comes out. This is why it's that trust element and that letting go is crucial, because you can't stop to think about it, because then that's when you start preventing the energy coming through. So I get
all right.
visuals.
I get mine. So it's like watching a movie. It's like I
Yeah.
am that person. It's like you look down and you see a boy's body or a woman wearing a periodic dress, or I look down and I was in a car with my husband then over there in another life. And you have that firsthand experience, and I'm looking around and I can see it and you can describe it, is because for that period of time under trance, I forget that I'm Eleanor and you forget that there's a body here. So I am that person which I once was, and I'm walking through it. The scene is unfolding. It's like I'm walking through, let's say, the grounds I was in one life. Daniel's asking, where are you? What can you see? It's like I'm here, and this is what I see. And you see it in, as real as I'm looking at this laptop right now. I can describe the castle or where I am type of thing. So for some people it can be highly visual. Some people only experience sensations, which is just as powerful. It will come through in many different ways as to how different people are wired as well.
This is the
That's
thing.
the important part.
I also thought I had aphantasia because I had a very weak third eye. And so my ability to see with my mind's eye, at the time, I thought I didn't have the capacity. And that's what aphantasia is, that lack of ability to visualize. And so I would even
Right.
just get it as a knowing.
That's the point that a lot of people don't understand about clairvoyance, that
Mm.
everybody has its preferred channel. Maybe you could develop other channels over time, but naturally you have some channel that works for you the best, and that's what you develop, and that becomes clearer and clearer the vision. So one is
Yeah.
visual and one has a feeling. Now the classic question here is, we all met each other over and over in our past lives. Well, you are the experts. When have you met? And you were a daughter or son, or lovers or enemies, and you killed each other in a horrible war in the mid ages. So tell us a bit about where you've met and what you've done for each other. Let's take it from there.
When we landed in Brisbane, we were at the market and there was a tarot reader who we just felt drawn to. We came up here for past lives, so let's see if he can use tarot to find one past life for us. And he did. So he pulled up a life. He also intuited it using tarot and his cards. But he found a past life where we were lovers and we died together, not by accident, but on purpose at the same time. And I was like, "Oh, okay, what is this?" So up in Brisbane, Daniel brought the tarot deck that he uses, and we wanted to get more information. There was another life that it seemed to be more like colleagues or we worked together on something. And then we tried to find out more details as to the life that the tarot reader in the market pulled up. And there was a bit of, I did something wrong and Daniel was taking the blame for me. It was Bonnie and Clyde energy kind of thing coming through.
Just tell me, how did he look in the past life? As beautiful as now, or had a beard, or just?
And then in a part and then the details came through when Daniel went through the regression. So I had done something and this was in a primitive time and Daniel was being tortured at the stake. And I was very
Oh,
frantic about it and I couldn't handle that. So I went up to the pier and lit us both on fire. And that's how we died together, not by accident at the same time.
She lit the whole pyre on fire so they couldn't continue to torture me, and we both died very quickly.
But
and
in
they
terms of
say
like,
it leaves marks. It's supposed to leave marks,
yeah,
and
I do have a
I
birthmark,
guess.
but I haven't investigated what that's from. Don't know if it's that one particularly, but in another past, when I went under and Daniel was the hypnotist, he did ask, how many lives have we lived together? And even in the regression up in Brisbane when we had it, it was deep. But they're not going to give us a number because in this life, Daniel set himself up that he will find out everything himself, so nothing gets given or done for Daniel, whereas other people, there's a bit more, I don't know if help's the right word, like the help is there, but Daniel will find out the quantity of lives per se, but we will also be using QHHT on each other to find as many lives that we can catalog and see
And
who we've played as.
and write a book about it.
Yes.
I just wanted to say right the second you said it, catalog. I hope this will end up in a book, because it will be so fascinating having like a line, like, like when people showing their ancestors. If you try to build a line, yours and his, and then in the end you show their interlinking and how you've over and over met. And I think it makes a very
Mm.
strong love story by the
Yeah.
end of the day. Love throughout the centuries. Here we
It's
go.
got similarities to the movie Cloud Atlas,
Oh.
if you've heard of that one. It's about
Um,
reincarnation and how choices in one life affect another life.
maybe I'm just horrible with names, right? But I'm not sure. But I understand what you're saying, and I really think that this will be a very interesting book, because you have a
Mm.
lot of ways to go to present it, and especially people love to read love stories. And if you have, last 2,000 years, and you've been over and over coming and finding each other, and it's like meant to be the magnetism over time, I think this could be a really wonderful book that a lot of people would love to read. So that brings us, I guess, to the end of this podcast. Although I was thinking I have two guests, so it should be double time.
No, not necessarily. The message is the same, and we bring the different perspective to the same experience, and it's wonderful to be
Right.
able to do this together
Yeah.
as well.
And I think we
So
also
our
just want to
last,
normalize a lot of this as well for people. Even past lives are
yeah,
like, I don't believe in that. And it's like, we've experienced it and we do it for work. It's like, it's there if anyone wants to explore it.
right. This is again, people believe, people don't believe. It's a waste of time, and when people need the answers, they will come and looking for it. And
Mm.
once they don't need the answers, there's no point of even trying to give it to them. But once you need it, you will search for it, and once you don't need it, it's just, that's what it is, right? So to
Absolutely.
the obsessing about it is just absolutely waste of time. Convincing people about inner truth is just, is a waste of time. So we're coming to the end of this podcast, and a couple of things you said that maybe would be a beautiful ending. Whoever of you would like to give the last couple of minutes, of course, looking into the future, you work as a therapist, live, online. You said you want to educate people, which I love very much to hear. Goes the book and exploring all your different lives. I think we're all very curious and waiting for it. That sounds like something, but I hear there's more there unsaid, or there's more that I know because I can feel there's more happening. So give us a little bit outlook what you guys planning for the next year, year and a half. Are you building community? You're building a platform? Are you building educational material? Give us a bit of an idea, because I mean, you're an expert in making videos and talking to people. You're the researcher. So there's probably a dynamic going on between you two. So what we can see is it's going to be a ashram building somewhere in beautiful Australia. Is it a online ashram getting built, or is it just really doing the work? And give us an idea where we're heading next.
Of course. We are writing our first book, not necessarily our past life book, but we want this, our first book, to really be an onboarding tool and to deconstruct and unwind people from where they are right now before they can even invite such a level of depth into their life. So we're working on our first book. We're very excited to be exhibiting at a Mind Body Spirit festival here. It's one of the major festivals in Australia for those in the spiritual field. So we have a lot of work to put together for that. And, even just speaking about it now is already sending energy to the exhibition and to getting our work out. We're moments away from, okay, maybe a week, not moments, from setting up our online store, which allows people to have astrological profiles written for them. It's done through an astrological software, and people will be able to get, what do they want to know about their health? What do they know about their unconscious patterns about money, about relationships, about Chiron, which is the wounding, about the sinistrium composite between individuals. And I read the modern one, which covers the big three. So your sun, moon, and ascendant. And I was just completely immersed. It's as if I had never known any of this before. And some people don't want a reading. Some people don't want to talk to anyone. It starts to give people an insight into there is so much more to you than what you know and what you have also been presented with. So that's very exciting as well. And we are working on our own journeys. We're traveling to the upper world and the underworld, and that is just extremely powerful in terms of visiting your own shadow and understanding. We speak about the fragmented psyche, but having a first-hand direct experience with those parts is phenomenal and moves unconscious mountains. So we're developing that as well, and we will be able to move into, we'll manifest the space that we need in order to carry this out. There is something so beautiful when this is done in person. And of course, there will be, an online component, online group healing, but the more energy and faculties that we bring online will want to put that out into the world as well and allow truth of you to unfold and grow up as to who it wants to express as well.
I was hoping for the next 6 months. I have the next 60 years here right now. It's unbelievable. I can feel the energy. I can feel all of the plans and moving forward, and it's going to be really fantastic. I think we all can see and feel that. And I would love to end, but I'm not sure if I can get it right. But what they say, like, what God brought together, man should not part. And in your case, what the ages brought together, man should not part. I mean, being over hundreds of years, meeting each other over and over, being lovers, dying together. So I wish you all the love and all the energy and all the depth that I can possibly wish someone. And
Thank
we're
you,
all
Philip.
looking forward. And once you bring the book, please give me a ring. I'll be happy to have you again on my podcast presenting your book. So
Oh,
thank you
thank you
very
so much.
much to Australia. Have a wonderful afternoon. This is it from me. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Philip.
Philip. Thank you for having us.